And once we finish the external features, we are going to talk about the internal features of the brainstem. The following that we are going to talk about the cranial nerves in detail a little bit, and then finally we are going to talk about some of the regions of the brainstem. So the first part is to describe the external features, and if you can see, you have the brainstem here, and the brainstem is divided into three portions. The lowermost part is the medulla, then you have the pons, and then you have the midbrain. So these are the three parts of the brainstem: medulla, pons, and the midbrain. And if we start to draw the anterior picture of the brainstem, this part is the medulla, then this is the pons, and this is the midbrain. So let's start with the lower part, which is the medulla. And if you see in the medulla, you have a median sulcus here. Can you see this? This is the median sulcus. On the side of the median sulcus, there are two elevations which are called the pyramids. We have been talking about the pyramids, that these are important in terms of the corticospinal tract, because the corticospinal tract is descending interiorly. You have these elevations which are called the pyramids. If you can see the lower part of the medulla, there is pyramidal decussation. So the fibers of the corticospinal tract are crossing. Lateral to the pyramid, there is an anterior median sulcus. This is the anterior median sulcus, and in this anterior median sulcus, you can see a nerve rootlet coming out. Can you make out this nerve rootlet? This is the hypoglossal nerve, or the 12th cranial nerve. The function of the 12th cranial nerve is the motor supply to the tongue. So the muscles of the tongue are supplied by the hypoglossal nerve, the 12th cranial nerve. Not the taste fibers, not the sensory fibers. The motor fibers to the tongue, which move the tongue right, left, up, down, are going to be supplied by the hypoglossal nerve, which comes out from the lateral aspect of the pyramid, which is the anterior median sulcus. Only motor. It is only motor, purely motor nerve. The 12th cranial nerve, the hypoglossal nerve, is a purely motor nerve which supplies the muscles of the tongue. Next to it, you can see this elevation, which is called the olive. It is called olive because it looks like an olive. It's an elevation here. There is a nucleus beneath it, which is called the inferior olivary nucleus. When we are going to talk about the cross section of the medulla, we would talk about what is inferior olivary nucleus and why, what is the importance, what is the function. But you can make out that just lateral to the anterior median sulcus, there is this elevation which is called the olive, and olive is formed by the inferior olivary nucleus. Next to it, next to olive, is the anterior lateral sulcus, and through this anterior lateral sulcus you have 9th, 10th and the 11th cranial nerves coming out. 9th is called the glossopharyngeal nerve, 10th is the vagus, and the 11th cranial nerve is the accessory nerve. Now, the 9th cranial nerve, which is the glossopharyngeal, is mainly a sensory nerve, and it supplies sensory supply to the posterior 1/3 of the tongue. Also, it is sensory to the pharynx, and it supplies one muscle, which is the stylopharyngeus muscle. It also have parasympathetic component, and it is going to supply the parasympathetic supply to your parotid gland. The parotid gland is a salivary gland here, and it is going to get its parasympathetic supply from the glossopharyngeal nerve. So glossopharyngeal nerve is sensory, motor, and parasympathetic. Sensory to the posterior 1/3 of the tongue, sensory to the pharynx, and it is motor because it supplies one muscle within the pharynx, which is the stylopharyngeus, and it is parasympathetic because it is going to supply secretomotor fibers to the salivary gland, which is called the parotid gland. Now the 10th cranial nerve again is a mixed type of nerve. It has a sensory component, it has a motor component, and it has the parasympathetic component. The sensory component of the vagus nerve is to the posterior 1/3 of the to the root of the tongue, and it also supplies some area within the ear as a sensory supply. Yes. No, posterior 1/3 is supplied by glossopharyngeal. The root of the tongue is basically supplied by the vagus, and in the area of the epiglottis at the root of the tongue is supplied by the vagus, the sensory supply, and it also takes some sensory supply from the ear. It has a lot of parasympathetic supply because it is supplying the parasympathetic supply to the heart, to the lungs. It is also important for supplying the whole of the intestine up to the right third of the transverse colon. In terms of the motor supply, it is going to supply the muscles of the pharynx and larynx. So it is a motor component also. So it's a mixed nerve, and it has a lot of areas of supply. Finally, we have the accessory nerve, and the accessory nerve, especially the spinal part of the accessory, is going to supply the sternocleidomastoid and the trapezius muscle. The cranial part of the accessory is going to join with the vagus, and it is going to supply the muscles of pharynx and larynx. So pharynx and larynx, muscles of pharynx and larynx, although are supplied by the vagus nerve, but it are through the cranial root of accessory nerve, which is the 11th cranial nerve. Now, if you see the front part of the pons, what you would see in the center is a basilar groove. And this basilar groove, because it is going to rest on the base of the skull, there is a groove in the center which is called the basilar groove. And this basilar groove is going to lodge an artery which is called the basilar artery. So there are two vertebral arteries on the front part of the medulla, and they are going to join and form a central artery which is going to run on this basilar groove, which is called the basilar artery. Yes?
Is the accessory only motor? Is the accessory nerve?
Only motor. So the central part here, basilar groove, you will have the basilar artery. Now you can see the pons is more like the bridge. It's a Greek term for a bridge, and it's a bridge between the two cerebellar hemispheres. So what you are going to see in the front are transverse fibers which are going laterally towards the cerebellum, and so the lateral portions of the pons are going to join the cerebellum by middle cerebellar peduncle. Now, what else you are going to see? You are going to see at the junction of pons and the medulla several cranial nerves coming out. So the most medial one is the abducent, which is the 6th cranial nerve. Then you have the 7th cranial nerve, which is the facial, and the lateral most is the 8th cranial nerve, which is the vestibulocochlear nerve. So you have 6th, 7th, and 8th coming out at the junction of pons and medulla. The most medial is abducent, then laterally facial, and then more laterally is vestibulocochlear, which is the 8th cranial nerve. Now, the abducent nerve is a motor nerve. It's a purely motor nerve, and it supplies only one muscle within the eye, which is called the lateral rectus. And this lateral rectus moves your eye laterally. So there is an extraocular muscle which is moving the eyeball, which is called the lateral rectus. It is supplied by the abducent nerve. It moves the eye laterally. So if abducent nerve is gone, your eye is going to move medially. So lateral rectus is the muscle which is supplied by the 6th cranial nerve, which is the abducent nerve, and it is the most medial nerve which is coming out at the junction of pons and medulla. The next one which you are seeing here is the facial nerve. Now, facial nerve is again a mixed nerve and a very important nerve, because the facial nerve is going to have a sensory supply. The sensory supply is from the anterior 2/3 of the tongue. So your anterior 2/3 of the tongue have taste sensations, you have pain and temperature from the anterior 2/3 of the tongue. That is going to go to facial nerve. Then you have the muscles of facial expression. So the motor supply is to the muscles of facial expression. So you smile, you frown, you close your eyes. These are the muscles of facial expression. They are supplied by the motor nucleus of the facial nerve. Facial nerve is also parasympathetic. So it has parasympathetic supply to the lacrimal gland, which is important for tear production, and it has also supplying parasympathetic supply to submandibular and the sublingual gland, which are salivary glands. So facial nerve is sensory to the anterior two-thirds of the tongue. It is motor to the muscles of facial expression, and it is parasympathetic to the lacrimal gland, which is important in tear production, and submandibular and sublingual glands, which are salivary glands. Next is the vestibulocochlear, which is the 8th cranial nerve. Vestibular means balance and cochlear means hearing. So vestibulocochlear is responsible for maintenance of balance and for hearing. So it is going to come out from your internal ear. So that is responsible for balance and for hearing. Vestibulocochlear is the 8th cranial nerve. In the upper part of the pons, you are seeing the trigeminal nerve, which is the 5th cranial nerve. It has two rootlets. One is the sensory, the other is the motor rootlet. The sensory rootlet is basically taking out the nerve supply from all of the face. So your pain, temperature, touch, pressure on the face. You have ophthalmic, maxillary and mandibular divisions of trigeminal. They are taking out your sensory sensation. Pain, temperature, touch from the face is going to go to the trigeminal. Now the motor rootlet of the trigeminal is important because it is supplying the muscles of mastication. So the muscles which are important in moving your jaw while you are chewing are called muscles of mastication, and they are supplied by the motor rootlet of the trigeminal nerve. Now there are 4 muscles of mastication. One is masseter, median and lateral pterygoid, and you have the temporalis muscle. So medial, lateral pterygoid, temporalis and masseter are 4 muscles of mastication which are supplied by the motor rootlet of the trigeminal. We go up, you would see the cerebral peduncles. Can you see this is the midbrain? So these are the cerebral peduncles, which are mainly formed by the corticospinal and corticonuclear fibers which are descending. So cerebral peduncles are here, which are the front part of the midbrain. In between that there is an interpeduncular fossa. Within the interpeduncular fossa, the nerve which is coming out here is the oculomotor nerve, which is the 3rd cranial nerve. This is going to supply all the muscles of all the extraocular muscles which move your eye, except 2 muscles. One is the lateral rectus, which is supplied by the abducens, and the other is the superior oblique muscle, which is supplied by the 4th cranial nerve, which is the trochlear. So all the muscles of movement of the eye, the extraocular muscles, are supplied by the 3rd cranial nerve, except 2 muscles. One is the lateral rectus muscle, which is supplied by the 6th, and the superior oblique muscle, which is supplied by the 4th. So the mnemonic which is used usually is LR6 SO4. So LR6 means the lateral rectus is supplied by abducens, which is the 6th cranial nerve, and superior oblique is supplied by the 4th cranial nerve, which is the trochlear nerve. Now, if you see in the interpeduncular fossa, you see these mammillary bodies, these small rounded bodies which are called the mammillary bodies. And then you can see the stalk of the pituitary gland. So this is the area from where the pituitary gland is going to hang. In front of that you can see the optic chiasm, and these are the optic tracts which are going to curl around the cerebral peduncles and go back. So you can see the parts of the 2nd cranial nerve, but the 2nd cranial nerve is not coming out from the brainstem. So you need to remember that the nerves which are going to come out from the brainstem are from 3rd to 12th. The first 2 cranial nerves are not going to come out from the brainstem. But you can see part of the optic or the 2nd cranial nerve which is in front of the cerebral peduncles. So there is an optic chiasma formed here, and then you can see the optic tracts which are curling around the crus cerebri or the cerebral peduncle and going back to the occipital lobe. Now if we look at the brainstem from the lateral aspect, yes, vestibulocochlear is only sensory.
Isn't the biggest sensory only the small area of the ear, and what is that? Which? The biggest.
vagus to the ear, and the area of the root of the tongue and the epiglottis.
Doctor, please,
Sensory
Doctor,
Yes.
please can you point,
Using the point.
using the pointer
Yes.
at each one, please, just
Okay.
to...
Doctor, can you repeat the part about cross cerebri?
Not cerebri or the cerebral peduncles. So cerebral peduncles, if we go here, these are the cerebral peduncles, and these cerebral peduncles are mainly formed by the corticospinal tracts and the corticonuclear fibers and the corticopontine fibers, which are coming from the cortex. They will go to the pons, relay there, and then pass to the cerebellum. So if you see the pons, it is quite wide here because these are the corticopontine fibers which are descending down from the cortex, relay in the pontine nuclei, and then they will cross to the cerebellar hemisphere. So as they are going to cross, they are going to form a bundle of fibers which is called the middle cerebellar peduncle.
Doctor, what is the third nerve?
Glossopharyngeal and facial both supply the tongue and both have the special taste.
Yes, so anterior 1/3, anterior 2/3 of the tongue is supplied by facial. Posterior 1/3 of the tongue is supplied by glossopharyngeal.
And both have
Both
special-
have taste as well as sensory supply. So your tongue can have pain, temperature, touch as well as taste sensation. From anterior 2/3, it's going to facial. From posterior 1/3, it is going to go to glossopharyngeal. Yes, I can't hear you. Which nerve? Olfactory and optic are not from the brainstem. The first two.
Doctor,
Yes.
what is the third nerve? Third cranial nerve.
Here, this is the third cranial, oculomotor. Fourth you cannot see on the ventral surface. It comes out from the back of the brainstem. It goes in front, but it comes out from the back. So what you are seeing are the nerves which are coming out from the front. So the only nerve, the only cranial nerve from 3 to 12, which comes out from the back of the brainstem, is the fourth cranial nerve, which is the trochlear nerve. So if we go into the lateral aspect of the brainstem, you can see that this is the pyramid. This is the anterior medial sulcus. So the anterior medial sulcus is going to give rise to the hypoglossal nerve. Then you are seeing the olive. Then you are seeing the 9th, 10th, 11th, which is the glossopharyngeal, vagus, and the accessory. And in between them you can see the olive. Posteriorly you can see these tubercles. Can you make out these tubercles? One is called the cunate tubercle, the other is called the gracile tubercle. And these tubercles are formed because of the nucleus cunatus and nucleus gracilis. So you have nucleus cunatus and nucleus gracilis forming these tubercles. Then you can see at the junction of pons and medulla, you have the 6th, 7th and the 8th cranial nerve. And this is the trigeminal nerve which is coming out. You can see the middle cerebellar peduncles which are going and getting attached to the cerebellum. Then you can see, these bodies which are basically connecting the posterior aspect of the midbrain to the thalamus. And there are two types of bodies. One is called the medial geniculate body. The other is called the lateral geniculate body. They are actually attached with the thalamus. The medial geniculate body is responsible for hearing. The lateral geniculate body is responsible for vision. And you have these elevations at the back of the midbrain, which are called the superior colliculus and inferior colliculus. We can look at it from the back, the brainstem, and if you look at the brainstem from the back, this is the midbrain, this is the posterior aspect of the pons, and this is the posterior aspect of the back of the medulla. We have taken out the cerebellum, so you now are seeing the floor of the fourth ventricle. Can you make out this? This is the floor of the fourth ventricle, which is formed by the posterior surface of the pons and medulla, and we have taken out the cerebellum. So if we start from the posterior aspect of the midbrain, you can see that you have an elevation here. This is called the superior colliculus. These are elevations like collars coming out from the back. So you have the superior colliculus, which is responsible for vision. Then you see the inferior colliculus, which is responsible for auditory reflexes, and below